особенного можно сказать о новом, только что родившемся городе? Разве что возник он благодаря...
This footage has not yet been released. It is now impossible to determine who shot this and when. The birth of the Soviet Union's pride, the city of Pripyat.
В которых люди будут жить не один год.
It's accompanied by a narrative typical of those times. It ends by saying that Pripyat was lucky.
Городу Припяти повезло.
The word Chernobyl became known worldwide shortly after the 1986 blast, but the little town with this name was situated some 15 kilometers away from the station and had a population of just about 10,000 people. Meanwhile, it is this place, some 3,000 meters from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which up to this day serves to remind about the extent of the tragedy. Pripyat. We take a walk along the streets of the ghost town in this documentary.
The 1970s. The Soviet Union actively promoted peaceful atomic energy and launched massive nationwide building of nuclear power plants. One of the biggest projects of the time was a station near Chernobyl, a small town some 100 kilometers from Kiev. By the mid-1970s, Ukraine's first nuclear power station was already up and running, creating tens of thousands of jobs and a new residential area, Pripyat. In the Soviet Union, such cities were called Atomograd, or nuclear city. They accommodated the employees of local power plants. But Pripyat probably topped the list. Home to more than 50,000 people, most of whom worked at the Chernobyl station, it was regarded as the city of the future, almost a residential role model for the Soviet Union. On several occasions, Pripyat was awarded the Best Architecture and Planning Prize. But this communist paradise changed on one warm spring day, April the 26th, 1986, when an explosion destroyed the reactor of the nuclear power plant, what was later described as history's biggest man-made disaster. Alexander Esaulov leads us up the stairs to what used to be his office. Back in the 1980s, he worked as the deputy head of the city's executive committee. In a nutshell, he stood next to the mayor. Alexander is the highest-ranking official of Pripyat, still alive.
I was involved in city planning. All major projects passed through me. This used to be my office. I don't quite understand, though, who removed all the heaters from here and why, and who broke all of the windows.
Do you feel sad about coming here?
I was the youngest of all the officials in the region. Of course, those were my best years, and I enjoyed my work very much. It all ended very sadly and suddenly.
While the destroyed reactor spread radiation everywhere, Pripyat continued with normal weekend life. Women took their children outdoors, weddings were held, and men fished in the river. For more than a day, the government kept the Chernobyl fallout a secret, not only from residents, but also from the whole country and the rest of the world. As it was explained later, the authorities did not want to cause panic.
This Ferris wheel and adjoining theme park have now become Pripyat's most popular landmark. But few actually know that it was meant to be launched on May the 1st, 1986. This was supposed to be a gift for the residents on the Labor Day holiday. Officially, the public had no chance to ride it.
But photos published recently on the internet have caused quite a stir. They show people queuing up at the park. Some suggested that the authorities launched the wheel on the day of the blast to take people's minds off what had happened.
It's absolute rubbish. We didn't even have a thought about launching the theme park to keep people occupied. People in the town were calm. There was no panic.
But what about those pictures?
Well, I remember there was a test run of the Ferris wheel, and few actually went on it. But it definitely wasn't working on April the 26th.
Within 36 hours of the blast, the evacuation of Pripyat kicked off. For years, many have lashed out at the authorities as to why the decision was taking so late, a question which still irritates Alexander, one of the organizers of the operation.
Those who ask the question don't quite understand what it takes to evacuate as many as 50,000 people. You simply can't do it in 1 hour or in 2 hours. We brought 1,300 buses here from Kiev. We had to inform people, bring them together, and in the first place we had to understand whether we actually needed the evacuation. Even specialists in the first stages didn't know whether the reactor was destroyed.
The same power which created Pripyat, in the blink of an eye turned it into a no man's land. By sunset on April the 27th, the town had been completely evacuated, paving the way for a mass exodus from the whole area.
Pripyat wasn't the only place to be abandoned forever. This only looks like just another hill, but in fact I'm walking on what used to be a house. People used to live here. The village of Kopachi, right next to the nuclear power station, had to be buried underground, not to let the radiation spread.
It still remains unclear how large the doses of radiation were during the period residents were exposed to the harmful rays. But clearly it was enough for thousands to permanently damage their health. Alexander Krutov, one of the first TV journalists to be allowed into the 30-kilometer exclusion zone, remembers the fear of an invisible threat.
We were having a cup of tea at Pripyat a few days after the blast, when I saw a small mouse running across the floor. Suddenly she fell over and continued moving on her front legs, as if her back legs were crippled. I asked one of the liquidators what had happened to her. He looked and said she'd had too much radiation.
The impact on the environment was immense. A strip of forest next to Pripyat was burnt by a wave of radiation and turned red. Up until this very day, it remains an area with the highest level of radiation.
This river here is also called Pripyat, and in fact it gave the town its name. Its beaches were once crowded, but it seems to have the same fate. It has become the final destination, a graveyard for these ships.
Many swam in the river before the fallout, many young men. The water was very pure.
Pyotr Popov was among a huge army of people involved in the cleanup operation, and they were called liquidators. His crew faced a hard task, removing radioactive pieces of graphite from nearby rivers and cooling ponds. An unprecedented job in world history, as divers didn't have the training to work in such conditions.
Our gear didn't protect us. It had a woolen inside. So no matter how hard you washed it, the radiation remained. The same story with our equipment. Divers don't care how they descend. But the conditions were hard. We all got a strong dose in the end.
Residents of Pripyat managed to escape death, and for them it was better late than never. Many agree that the evacuation itself went very smoothly and quickly. More than 50,000 were put on buses and taken out within just several hours. Maybe it happened so quickly because the authorities had explained that it was just a temporary move.
People barely had any time to pack their bags, and they were told they would return in just a couple of days, so most of them left their belongings in their flats. But nowadays it's only broken furniture and torn wallpaper which remain here.
Just like the shattered glass all over the town, this is not a sign of it being left derelict. Over the years, Pripyat has become a mecca for marauders and vandals. This footage was recorded with a hidden camera a short while ago. Unidentified men are loading trucks with heating radiators. The town was left full of them. One cost just $10 on the black market. Tens of thousands have been taken out of Pripyat since it was evacuated. According to the liquidators, nothing like this took place 2 decades ago.
There was a rule. Even if you saw a wallet full of money on the ground, you shouldn't take it. It meant it was contaminated and somebody dropped it on purpose. Nobody took anything.
But those people who are selling on the dirty catch are hardly worrying about bits of steel, which could still be dangerous.
Pripyat is thought to be relatively safe in terms of radiation, but for several dangerous spots. Like take this layer of moss on the ground, which acts like a radioactive sponge. You put the meter on it, and it goes crazy the next second. You can see it for yourself, 20, 30 times more than normal human level.
It may seem to be something of a threat, but it has become one of the ghost town's tourist attractions. Something which gives the thousands who come here from across the world a thrill. Those who lust after a post-apocalyptic experience. Many want a souvenir from the ghost town, and in other cases, they want to leave something behind.
2 decades passed since the fallout, and all of a sudden, strange, grim-looking figures appeared on the walls of the ghost city.
Kostya Danilov was among a multinational team of graffiti artists from Russia, Belarus and Germany who visited Pripyat in 2005 on a special mission.
On our way there, we thought we would draw our own concepts, something we usually draw in our cities. But when we went there and saw Pripyat, we changed our minds. I usually draw colorful, happy things. But the atmosphere changed my plans.
This shadowy figure of a girl in Pripyat's tallest apartment building was his first work.
For the first couple of hours, I felt lost in the dead streets. I went into houses, deserted flats. I saw the elevator shaft and suddenly pictured this little girl pushing the button. I didn't think we were doing something bad. We went there and breathed a little bit of life into that dead city.
Kostya didn't know at the time that it was his first and last trip to the zone, as his team is now banned from entering it. What he saw as a noble cause, even though met thumbs up from many of his generation, did not find much appreciation from those who lived there.
Do people draw pictures on tombstones? Do people steal iron crosses from graveyards? It is meant to be a memory. And I would say it's blasphemous to do something like this.
A genuine depiction of an apocalypse, this is what the public sees Pripyat as now. But nevertheless, this dead town lives on, with its own way of life.